But let's begin this hour on Capitol Hill, as Democrats are reportedly united against House Speaker Mike Johnson ahead of next month's Speaker vote.
Madeline Rivera is in Washington with the details. Madeline.
Hi, good morning. House Speaker Mike Johnson survived an ouster bid in May. He made it with the help of Democrats who voted to save him. This time, Democrats say they won't be doing that again.
Hakeem has made that very clear. And you saw that as we voted on the budget at the end of the year, we stayed united. There were a lot of things in there that bothered us. We stayed together. And trust me, we will do the same thing on the House floor when the vote for Speaker comes up. Democrats are going to be united. We are not going to bail him out this time.
That puts Johnson in a tight spot. The next Congress will begin with 219 House Republicans and 215 House Democrats. Johnson needs 218 votes to keep his job. One congressman, Republican Thomas Massie, has said he won't be supporting Johnson. That means another defection could sink Johnson's prospects. Other congressmen, Andy Harris, Scott Perry, Troy Nehls, and Tim Burchett, for instance, are also on the fence. But Johnson's allies are warning against a fight over the gavel. They say a speaker's battle is a distraction and will delay them from enacting President-elect Trump's agenda.
I fully support Mike Johnson. I think he's done as good a job as anyone could have done with the cards that he's been dealt. And then who else is going to do it? We have been given a mandate by the American people. President Trump has been given a mandate. The first 100 days are going to be extremely important. We do not need a protracted speaker's race.
We're still waiting for President-elect Trump to weigh in on the speaker's vote. Republicans say he will have the ultimate word on whether Johnson stays or goes. Will, Rachel, and Charlie.
Well, thank you, Madeline, for that.
Yeah.
Let's continue to analyze this with Fox News Sunday anchor Shannon Bream, who joins us now. Hey, Shannon.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. You know, we were just sitting here during Madeline's report talking about this. I think it's no surprise that Democrats are united against Mike Johnson. The question is about Republicans. And as everything governing going forward, it's going to be a question of Republicans and unity from Trump's nominees to his cabinet. If he has enough Republican support, then they'll be his nominees. And now with Mike Johnson, how much Republican support can he get? And I turn that over to you, Shannon.
Well, so you guys know, as Madeline was reporting, that Thomas Massie is saying he is a no vote. He's going to vote for someone other than Johnson. Unless he changes his mind, that's the deal. And that's the only vote that Johnson can really lose based on the current numbers. Our Chad Pergram, you know, who is the best of the best on Capitol Hill, he does the math for us. And he says, basically, that's it. Every other Republican has to stick together for Johnson or he is in real trouble. But as you've also heard there, too, where do you go next? Who is the other Republican that takes up this mantle and can get 218 votes? I do think it's going to be really important to hear from President Trump. He's been supportive of the speaker. You heard Elon Musk also come out after that vote to get the continuing resolution done and saying he did the best with what he had to work with. So absent that, it sounds like he's the guy, but you can't lose anyone past Thomas Massie and hold on to the gavel. And remember, they literally can't do anything in the House, including certify the election on January 6th, if they don't have a speaker.
Well, Shannon, we were just talking on the couch, the three of us. I don't want to speak for everyone. I have a lot of respect for Thomas Massie. And
we all like Thomas Massie. By the way, I like Speaker Johnson as well. I think
do
he's
too.
a very affable, great guy. But my question is Thomas Massie, has he put something on the table like, I want you to do this, and then you get my vote? Or is he just a no matter what?
Well, what he said is that the legislative branch is behaving very weakly. He thinks that they need to stand up, be independent from the executive and judicial branches, and do their job. So based on that, I don't know what the speaker could tell him or give him that would assure him that is going to change enough to convince him by January 3rd. But maybe they're having those back-channel conversations about what it will take to win that vote back because it's so precarious. But he hasn't publicly said something like a list of demands, you do these things, I change my vote. We haven't seen that publicly.
Yeah, can I just say, Charlie, to you, as much as Shannon, he also hasn't said what his alternative would be to Speaker Johnson.
Which is always the problem. Yeah, and the wonderful thing about Thomas Massie, but also the difficult thing about Thomas Massie, is that you're not going to buy him off by building a bridge in his district. Yeah. He really doesn't care about that kind of thing. He's a very highly principled guy. And it does seem like the question that he's going to wind up getting stuck on is what is the alternative? And at a moment like this where you have, Republicans have, whatever it is, 70, 80% of what it is that they want and what they need to get things done in Washington, do you want to derail that or get things on track with Trump in the White House and Republicans in control of both chambers of Congress.
Well, it sounds like he's going to make his point one way or the other. And again, if he's the only vote that Johnson loses, Johnson can still hold on to this thing. The worst case scenario, way back in the 1860s, I think it was, somebody went through 133 ballots to get to Speaker. I do not think we're going to get anywhere near that this time, but there are real questions about how this thing gets done. By the way, Congressman Massey is one of those who said, I don't buy the argument about pressuring me that we can't certify the election on January 6th. Like, that's not going to sway my vote. I'm not worried about that. It's not an issue. I have bigger concerns about how Congress is operating. But he hasn't given us an alternative name or somebody else he would vote for. And that person, whoever it would be, is certainly not going to get to 218. So how long he sticks with this and makes a point, and whether other Republicans join him in some show of force or stick together and give Johnson the 218 he needs, we'll find out in a few days.
Well, Shannon, one of the things that is commendable about Democrats, and you look at it this way, is they do stick together. They understand it's a team sport. And as you saw in that clip before with the Michigan Congresswoman, who she's saying, you know, we all vote together. Now, the Democrats are also facing, you know, what we've been talking about all morning, which is a rebranding. Here's Representative Dean Phillips from Minnesota. And he says this, he says it's a party that consists of multiple silos, and campaign committees and outside groups cannot strategically do its job. And that means leadership right now. We are totally devoid of leadership. We're rudderless. I don't know which Democratic Party member my colleagues would point to as the leader, as the de facto leader. And absent that, I don't see much, frankly, happening. What's your thoughts on that? And who do you think becomes that leader moving forward in this rudderless party, as Phillips describes it?
Yeah, and listen, as you guys know, I mean, he was a critic of President Biden running again from the beginning, and he has been raising these concerns, but many others have who are still a part of the party, including Congressman Ro Khanna, who's with us this morning on Fox News Sunday. He's talked about the fact that we didn't listen to people. We're going to, you know, the wrong positions on these culture war issues, that we're not using common sense on issues of crime and people feeling safe. So there's a lot of introspection publicly and privately happening with the party. One of the first big things they'll do is elect the new DNC chair. And so a lot of people are looking to that to see, all right, does that person become the leader of the party? All the big guns were out for the last election, Presidents Clinton and Obama and others who were super popular, and they didn't have a win with Vice President Harris. So, you know, that takes away a little bit of the luster from their leadership in the party. So who is the current leader? I think Democrats are still trying to figure that out themselves.
Shannon, what do you have coming up on Fox News Sunday? But also, let me ask you this question as you tell us that as well, because we debated this morning. Do you think John Fetterman has a political ceiling higher than Senator from Pennsylvania?
It's a good question. I mean, his name keeps being floated out there. But listen, as much as Democrats have had their frustrations with him because he's really tough on issues where he's not moving on Israel and its ability to defend itself at all costs. The border, he's called out his own party. So he's made friends across the aisle, but I don't know that he has enough of a strength within the Democrat Party to go beyond where he is now, only because they may not want him to, based on some of the things that he's saying.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.